You're watching Women of Strength TV with a purpose-driven woman who has a yearning deep in her soul to serve the world. Presented to you by Ange Wilcock, creator of Evolutionary Model of Well-Being, Mindfulness-Based Storytelling, and the Raw Woman Project, a businesswoman on a mission for every human on the earth to feel enough.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of Woman of Strength. And I've got another amazing guest to have a wonderful chat with today. And I'd like to introduce you to Annick Ina. Welcome.
Hi, and thanks for having me.
Oh, it's great to have you. Now, I'm just going to tell you a little bit about Annick. She is a transformational coach, a speaker, and author of Selves, Superstar, Healing the Past and Letting Love Shine. That sounds amazing. And Unconditional Love is her gift to the world. And after living with shame inside of her for years, leading to self-sabotage and self-abandonment, alcohol abuse, and sadly more shame, Annick's found her way back to herself through sobriety, and feels called to share her message with women who are feeling lost and alone. And that just fits so beautifully with Woman of Strength, because I found that through the women that I've interviewed, we all have such a deep, deep story to find out who we are. And I'd love to hear your story in terms of your journey to becoming that strong woman.
Thank you. Well, my story is a story of shame, and it's always difficult, and I talk about it in my book as well. It's always difficult to understand or to identify when shame started, because very often it is something that's transmitted like from generations, and it's something you inherit. So in my case, it started, like, concretely speaking, it started when I was 3.5. I don't know if you can see. I've got a piece of finger missing.
Oh, yes.
And I had a freak accident when I was a kid. The door banged on my finger, crushed my finger, and a piece was gone. So that was the first moment in my life where shame concretely, poked its head and said, I'm going to stay. And that was the beginning of just a long series of events that just confirmed or reconfirmed that shame. I grew up with a lot of shame, first because I was not like the other kids, but then it's like a snowball, and it kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Then as a teenager, I just felt like I wasn't meeting the requisites or the expectations of my parents, so I decided to go for the rebel road. But of course, deep inside, I would feel shame because I wasn't how others wanted me to be or how I myself thought I should be. So it went on bigger, bigger, bigger. And I think what really made it big is that at some point, I went back to my home country. And, when you've been a rebel, when you've been someone who was like I was, you still have this thing inside of you where you think, okay, I'm going to go back to my home country and I'm going to show them that I'm different now. I've done things differently. I'm not that same little hot mess that I was. And it kind of went completely the other way. It's
okay.
I went back home and I worked a lot. I think that was part of demonstrating that I had I don't know if that's parental guidance thing, but I had my stuff together, let's say, apparently, but then I had so much stress, and then, that's just what we did. It was an island, drinking at the bar was what we did. except that I had so much stress that I always ended up, when I was with friends at the bar drinking, completely letting go. And it was as if this part of me that was so stressed or that was constricted would just knock me out and say, ta-da! Now it's my time. And then she would do just crazy stuff. And the next day I would be left feeling just horrible. Yeah. Horrible for what I had done, full of shame, and sometimes full of guilt, because I would also do things that would damage my relationships with people. So it led to a lot of shame building up, a lot of guilt building up, until I think one of the massive steps was when I decided I didn't want that anymore. I didn't want to live with a part of me that I was kind of afraid of. And I just wanted peace. I wanted peace with all the pieces of me. And I remember I also had a couple of car accidents where no one was hurt, thank God. And I always think that's probably because the universe was sending me signs. And it was still saving me because I had a mission, and that was the mission, you know, to go through those things, to get into so many ridiculous risks and not be hurt, so that I would still be there to tell my story and to say, you know, things can change and things can be different. And I remember one day, you know, I was completely drunk. I decided to go say hi to my boyfriend at 4 a.m. and he lived 1 hour away. So I was completely drunk. I started driving. I drove for 1 hour without nothing happening, except 5 minutes before getting to his place, I drove straight into a roundabout.
Gosh.
My rear view mirror hit the pole, the signpost on the middle of the roundabout, my rear view mirror. If it was just, you know, just that, I would have crashed into that signpost in the middle of the night at 4 a.m., well, in the morning. I crashed, well, I didn't crash. I got straight into the roundabout. My tire burst, but I was so drunk, I kept driving. Took the wrong turn, kept driving and driving until I realized, well, I think I'm lost. And I stopped the car. And that's when I realized, when I wanted to turn it, I called for help. And I realized I had also run out of gas. So, you know, I thought,
wow, very vulnerable position to be in.
yeah. And I thought, you know, I don't want to be that girl calling her boyfriend at 4 a.m. Well, it was 5 now, with a burst tire in the middle of somewhere where everyone is going to work and they're looking at me thinking, what's wrong with her? Then the guy coming to fix my tire, my battery had gone dead by then because I had left the lights on. And he turns the car on with the battery, and now there's no gas. And, you know, I felt like really like a mess, and I didn't want that. And I thought, I've got to get my life together. And that's when it started, and that's when I decided to go for therapy. And that's where I was coming. I'm sorry, the story is a bit long.
I find the interesting part, you know, you said about the universe, you know, needs you to be here and sending signs and all of that, and kept you. I find it really interesting, the fact that you crashed, you had this accident in a roundabout, because on a roundabout you could have decided to take many exits, and one of them could have been, you know, a completely different road to obviously that you've taken. So I think that's amazing,
yeah,
isn't it?
I had never seen that like that, but yeah. Actually, now that you say that, it's really cool, because I was supposed to go straight at that roundabout, but I took an unexpected wrong turn. But this is the turn that then, you know, took me to the therapist, took me to start this new process, this new life. And I remember I was telling my therapist that I feel like I'm in the classroom, I'm the teacher, and the pupils have just gone wild. Like, they're shouting, and there's paper planes flying all over the classroom, and everything. And I have no idea what to do. And I just want my kids to be like sitting and listening to me telling stories, and we're going to be a whole big family. And that's how my story started.
And so what's your journey? So after you did therapy for a while, and so what came out of that? So after you'd been through, therapy route, what was your next step?
Well, I have to say, you would expect me to also say that's when I quit drinking, but that's not.
Yeah.
I started therapy a year later. So I started therapy, I started dealing with my stuff, with my past wounds, my unresolved issues, and it was painful, but I was still doing it. And then I think the journey gets to the point where about a year later, I feel like I'm okay. And then it's Christmas, I go visit, I'm at home, and I go visit a friend, and we catch up. I haven't seen her for 3 months, so we catch up on her veranda, and the next thing I know is I wake up in my bed and I have no idea how I got back home. I look out of the window, the car is there, and I'm like, oh my God, I did it again. And and that was the turning point. Nothing had happened again. But I thought, I can't even remember how I drove back home. I had carried my suitcases up the stairs in my bedroom, and I couldn't remember any of that. And I got scared, I got scared, and I thought, I'm not sure the universe is going to give me an unlimited number of chances like that. And I got really scared because I thought this was the time when the universe said, you know what, I saved you once again, but if you don't get your shit together, things are going to go bad. So that's when I decided to quit alcohol. And that's when the really real journey started. Because, alcohol was just a means for me to not deal with my issues, to not face my demons, and to, look the other way.
Yeah.
And getting sober, making that decision was the easiest part of everything, because what followed was, I think, the most challenging year of my life, because I was still in therapy and I was dealing with really, really painful stuff that I had kept hidden for a good reason for a long time. And I didn't have any numbing tool. I was just there with it, and I had to deal with it. And I think that's when, and I have absolutely no problem saying, that's how I think I became a woman of strength, because I learned to sit with those emotions, and I learned to be with myself no matter what.
Yeah, and that takes courage and strength and determination, because you actually have to look at who you are, isn't it? And that can be a tough place to be, because then you got to start looking at, well, this is who I am, and this is who I've been, but who do I want to become? And that's a real that's another journey in itself. Yeah,
absolutely. And I did hit rock bottom at some point, and that's why at the end of last year I just got to that place where I was facing who I was, that part of who I was that I still hadn't accepted, and that I was in that crossroads again, and I thought, I can either keep running, but I don't want to, because I'm exhausted and I don't want to keep running all my life, or I can just go towards the darkness instead of, running away from it. And that's when I took a month away. I went to London. I had a friend who was away. She lent me her house, and that's when I went there. I sat there for a month and wrote my book. That was my way to put everything on the table, look at it, and deal with it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think what we fall into the trap as humans is that we feel that our life experiences defines us, and it actually doesn't. It shapes us, but it doesn't define us. And so tell us about your book. You know, what's the title of your book?
So it's called Soul Superstar, Healing the Past and Letting Love Shine.
Yeah.
I'm having some doubts now because it's not yet out, so I might maybe tweak the title a bit. I don't know, but Soul Superstar is the part that's remaining, because my book is about me, as I said, dealing with my past issues that had been unresolved, looking at them and trying to understand, exploring these past issues. And as I said to a friend before I left, it was like, instead of running away from the darkness, I felt called to go down it. I imagine it as a dark basement, and I felt called to go there with my torch and with a light bulb to fix to that dark place, so that then it wouldn't be dark anymore. And that's what I did. So in my book, I look at the stories that have defined my life, somehow that have shaped my life. And as you said, and that's one thing that I say in my book, I often said, you know, my father had depression when I was 10. My mother had really high expectations for me and made me feel like I wasn't good enough. I always repeated that over and over and over again. And then at that point, I was like, that's not who I am. That's what happened to me. But I don't want to keep living with that as who I am. So I really wanted to put everything on paper, look at it, and leave it in the book. You know, it was like putting it out, getting it out of myself, and then saying, okay, this is what happened, but this is who I am. And the reason why the book is called Soul Superstar is that in the book, in between the various chapters, there is this voice of love that comes from my soul superstar.
Yeah.
She is love with a big L, love as the energy that rules the world, love as the higher power. And she is there giving me her wisdom throughout the book. And I think that's an interesting thing to tell, is that when I sent the manuscript to my editor and it came back, it was all, you know, red pen, except for the parts where my soul superstar spoke.
Yeah.
And those parts, she told me, those parts are just perfect. And myself, I thought that's probably because they were channeled, you know, they were pure love being poured on paper. And that's why they were just perfect as they were.
Yeah, absolutely. And I totally agree with that. I think that when we really, really do speak from our soul and we don't edit it, people connect to that. And then what happens is, you know, the critical mind comes in when we start writing, and then we go, oh no, we need to edit this, edit that. But
yeah,
you can't edit the soul's teachings whatsoever.
Absolutely.
Yeah, totally get that. Yeah. And so what's the key message that your book is sort of speaking? You know, is it targeted at women, or is it just sharing your story around alcohol, or, you know, what would we be reading about and learn from it?
It's just my story. It's not even so much, maybe I talked 2 or 3 times about alcohol. But it's more of my story after I quit alcohol. It's what happens, you know, when you decide. It's my experience of looking inside of myself, looking within after I quit alcohol, and how I dealt with it. So in a way, it's a bit to show the process, so that if a woman or a man, you know, wants to know how to look inside themselves and what they can find, and it's not going to be some scary thing, or sometimes it can be scary. And that's why also I do share a couple of times how I use EFT tapping.
Yes.
To deal with my fears and to deal with my pain and my emotions. And basically what I do is that I just put myself out there and show people that it's a process, and it's good. It can be done, and you will come out of it feeling better.
Great. Because you spoke earlier about, you know, that whole sense of feeling shame and guilt.
Mm-hmm.
How do you define shame, you know, and guilt? Because they're two different things, aren't they? So how would you define that? Because I know a lot of people, I'm a therapist myself, and I know when people feel shame, it's very different to feeling guilty. So what did shame, you know, how would you define shame?
So I think I will use Mike Ayamila's definition, because it just brought tears to my eyes when I saw that, because I could totally relate. He says that shame is the closest vibration to death that we can feel, because it's wishing a part of us didn't exist. And that, when I read that, that was like, wow, this is how I felt. You know, shame is thinking that a part of you, wanting that a part of you wouldn't be there or would be different, or, you know, not wanting. I think it's wanting that a part of you were not there. And that's what shame is. And guilt is feeling like you do not deserve to be loved.
Yeah.
Feeling like, you know, because you did something and you hurt people and you are a bad person, and therefore you do not deserve to be loved. And that's the same thing for shame as well. You wish that a part of you were different, but because that part of you is there, so you are not lovable. And that's why I always put shame and guilt together, and that's why they also fit together, because both of them lead to this feeling of you thinking that you are not lovable, whether because you do not have the characteristics, or because you have done things, or because you are not the way you should be, or because you have committed actions that and hurt people, or done things that make you not fit for love.
Yeah.
So
it all connects back to that. I'm not enough, isn't it? Because shame, the way that when I work with people around shame and guilt and defining the difference, it's very much shame. If you feel shame, it's like you are a bad person. Whereas when you feel guilty, it's about the thing that I've done is bad, as opposed to me being the bad person. So it's the behavior that's bad. But when we feel shame, it's actually defining us, that I am a bad person. And so that fits, you know, perfectly around how you are feeling about yourself. And shame is a really tough road to go along to heal from. And so when you were going through your therapy, and what was some of the key things that you learned about yourself, or any techniques, you know, you said about the tapping, but is there anything else that you learned to pull yourself away from shame and go, do you know what, actually I am okay, I'm an okay person, I've had these life experiences, but I'm not a bad person? Is there anything that you could share with us that's going to help other women out there feeling shame?
Yeah, absolutely. And I have to say, EFT did help. But EFT did help. I often tapped on forgiveness, and I think that's the thing. Forgiveness and love are key. They are. I don't think there's anything that can cure you from shame other than love, but love coming from yourself. And it can be hard. It can be hard to love that same part that you are not, because that's what shame is. Shame is you not accepting a part of you.
Absolutely.
And I realized that, you know, when I stopped drinking, I was okay because I thought that crazy part of me, that crazy alter ego is not going to come anymore, so I don't have to be afraid of her. But I was still afraid of her. I was just feeling okay because I wouldn't have to deal with her anymore. But I was still afraid of her. So what happened, and that was the second step, is that I invited her in. I invited her in for tea and a chat, you know, and I listened to her and I gave her love. You know, I said to her, I forgive you and I love you. I love you no matter what. You are part of me and I'm sorry. And as I'm saying this, I'm thinking about I never know how to pronounce it. Ho'oponopono, you know, the Hawaiian technique.
Yep.
I forgive you. I'm sorry. I love you, and thank you.
Yeah.
I think this is an amazing technique because when we open up to all those parts of ourselves that we do not accept, we become whole again, you know? We become whole again because we call up all the different parts of us and we just call them to ourselves and say, look, we're going to be a happy, loving family now. We will have our challenges, but we're going to do this together because we're going to clean the slate. What was done was done. And now we are just starting over again. And I had an interview yesterday and the interviewer said something that in the end, all we ever want is to be seen, to be heard, and to be loved. And I think that those parts of me that went crazy, those parts of me that did all those things, that was just like, you know, a kid trying to get attention because it's not getting the love it wants. It's not getting the attention it wants. And I think that the best way to deal with that is to giving love to those parts, giving love to all the parts of ourselves and accepting them as they are. And I'm saying this and I know people might say, yeah, but it's not that easy. And if you're looking for a technique, well, I think the Ho'oponopono, saying, I love you, well, I forgive you, I'm sorry, I love you, and thank you. Thank you for the lessons you've taught me.
It raises, and it not only raises your own vibration, it raises a universal vibration, because what you're saying is that you're not just saying it to yourself, you're saying it out to the universe, to everyone. And it does.
Yes.
I mean, I use that too, and it's amazing, and people don't realize the power of it. And it's like, it's just a few words. People go, it's just a few words, and it's like, well, it doesn't harm you.
I know.
Just do it. And people go, wow, this is amazing. So it's great to hear that you use that too, because there's so many amazing, simple techniques out there that can be used that people don't realize how powerful they actually are.
Absolutely. And this is just, as you said, simple, easy. You can do it at any time.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And it does work wonders. It does work amazingly well.
Yeah. And so where are you now on your journey? What does the road ahead look like for you?
So it's interesting that you asked. Writing my book was part of the journey. And when the book was done, I decided that this is it. We are ready for the next step. And I say we, it's funny. I am ready for the next step. We, all those parts of me are ready for the next step. And that's actually using my story and sharing those stories, those experiences, putting them out, even the ones, or maybe especially the ones that carried a lot of shame, a strong emotional charge, sharing these because these are the ones that will resonate with people and that will have people realize that they are not alone and that first, I think first and foremost that they are not alone. And secondly, that there is a way to do life differently. It can happen, and they are not doomed, because I used to think I was doomed. I used to think I am stuck with myself. I wish I could, just hop on another body in another life and be someone else, but I am just stuck with this. How the hell am I going to do life? I am just doomed forever. But
yeah,
I wasn't. And I just want people to know that there is a way to do things differently. And it's okay, whatever it is that happened before, it's what leads you to that moment where you will be ready to change. And that's okay. That's absolutely okay. So this is what I'm doing now. I decided to really step into this mission of helping people who were where I was, and really working with them and helping them go through that journey, go through their own journey of finding their way back to themselves, and most importantly, learning to be with themselves.
Yeah, and that's so important, because when we share our story, because like you said, we feel very much alone. We feel like this is just us going through this. But when we share our story, so many people connect to it and then go, wow, so you felt like that too. And it was like, yes. And so there's so much healing that goes on just in sharing stories. So
absolutely.
Yeah, fantastic. So have you got a launch date for your book, or are you still waiting for that? Or
I haven't picked a date yet. I'm hoping for it to be out next month. So somewhere in the month of May, beginning of June, maybe. My birthday is on the 16th of June. So I've set that as the date. It's going to be before, or definitely at latest on the 16th of June. Yeah.
Brilliant. So it's like a rebirth, isn't it? If it's on
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's funny you say that, because when I was writing my book, I was also listening to Lee Harris. I don't know if you've ever heard of him. He does wonderful things. He does these recordings. He's got 2 series. It's sounds, chanting, and toning with music. And it's like a cuddle for the soul. It's just so good. And the one I had bought and downloaded and listened to while I was writing was in 2 parts. It was Rebirth. One was Rebirth, and that's why I remember that. One was Rebirth, and the other one I think was Expansion or Opening Up, or I don't know what it was, but Rebirth was definitely one of that. And I feel that's really what happened.
Yeah. Yeah, and we can. I mean, we can rebirth as many times as we need to grow into the person that we want to become. So I think that's amazing. So how do women get in touch with you?
So the easiest way is by sending me an email, or they can go have a look at my website, which is www.annickina.com, so ANNICKINA.com, or, which is even easier, Soul Superstar, which is the title of my book, Soul Superstar, all together, all one word, .info. So they all lead back to my website, where you can get in touch with me, or I'm also on Facebook. So it's facebook.com/AnnickIna123.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. I've really enjoyed talking to you and finding out your story. And it's, again, an amazing story. And I love where your journey's taken you and the next part of it. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you. Thank you once again for allowing me to share it. Thank you.
Remain real, authentic, and whole. Be yourself and continue to follow your dreams. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll catch you next time on Woman of Strength TV.